graduation, David returned to the family farm, becoming the 5th generation to farm this land between Royalton and Sharon. He was active in many agricultural organizations, such as Cabot, Agrimark Cooperative, Windsor County Farm Bureau, and the Yankee Farm Credit, just to name a few. David was very involved in the community, playing trombone in the South Royalton Town Band, singing with Sounding Joy in Randolph and the Brookfield Singers, acting in many musicals at Chandler, even playing Santa Claus when needed. He served as a director for the Tunbridge Fair, a trustee on the Gifford Medical Center Board. He was our esteemed town moderator for 25 years, was trustee of the South Royalton Memorial Library for 23 years, and Justice of the Peace until the day he passed away. It is important to note that David also served as our community state representative for the towns of Royalton and Tunbridge for 6 years. And as one can see, David was an integral and significant member of the Royalton community. One personal lasting memory I have of David was how he would say at the end of every town meeting that I ever went to, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please stand up. Right? So anyway, what I'd like to do now is to hear from several speakers that we have lined up to talk a little bit about David that are of his friends and colleagues. And our first person is Charlie Bascom.
Thank you, Sandy and Royalton Select Board. It's wonderful to see all the people here for this dedication. There's so much to say about David, it's hard to know where to start. But the first thing is his family. His wife Peggy, his son Luther, daughter Grace, his grandchildren, and grandson. He loved them very dearly. 3 things that impressed me most about David. Number 1, giving nature. Number 2, public service. And number 3, he was always an optimist. I'd like to quote President Theodore Roosevelt. He'd like to say, you should be a good person to camp with, which means you should always do more than expected. David was one of those persons, a good person to camp with. David's giving nature. He was always looking to give a hand to help other people. He knew my carpentry skills were quite weak, so he called me up and said, I'll be up after chores to give you a hand with this project, where he'd do most of the skills work. David believed in the biblical principle of Matthew 6:3. But when you do a charitable deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Because of that, we'll never know all the good things he did for others. But I'm sure there's a lot of people here who have a David good deed story. I know that he grew and donated thousands of pounds of produce, squash, corn, and tomatoes to the senior center, Fall Church Suppers, for over 30 years. He did not want to be recognized for his deeds. Helping out was just the right thing to do. David's public life. Some of you may not know, but David did not come to Royalton until 1979, when he moved across the town line from Sharon into the Royalton farmhouse where his grandparents lived. Before that, he lived and was active in the town of Sharon local government. But living in Royalton, he still had to walk every day to Sharon and up the cows. In 1980, David became a Justice of the Peace. He held that office for over 38 years. I would venture to say that no other person has married as many people in the town of Royalton. He worked a lot of late night elections, counting ballots. He was the person that other JPs went to when there was a question about a ballot because of his integrity. In 1990, he became a town moderator and served in that office for over 25 years. Sometimes people get a little rowdy at Royalton Town meetings. I know of one case that a person got upset, and the meeting got a little hot, and David had to shut him down. Sometime later, David and Peggy were out for supper, and this gentleman came up to him and said to him and apologized to him and wanted to buy him their dinner. That shows he was respected by all sides. In 2002, he looked towards Montpelier and decided he wanted to represent Royalton in Congress. His main ideas were keeping Vermont affordable and helping Vermont farmers. Over the years, he lost some and won some races, but he was always ready to try again and believed he could make a difference. Optimism. Here was a man who worked 7 days a week with long hours, but he loved the farm life. He and Peggy, along with Jimmy Canarney and others, pitched in to make that farm a good and admired farm. He attended meetings 3 or 4 times a week. Go online and read his life story. The man was involved in countless organizations. It's just amazing all the things he belonged to. David had his ups and downs, good days and bad days in the last couple of years. Danger and infection had limited his ability to work around the farm, but he was always thinking about the farm. He would call Larry Trotter and talk about equipment for the spring. He'd call me up and talk about happenings in town and Montpelier. He was always an optimist, always looking forward, always looking busy. Example, last winter he brought a new corn plant for the spring. He was down in his wood shop cutting out small items to give to people. One day last winter he called up me up and said, "Hey, I made 5 or 6 pies. I want to drop one up to you and Carmen." He was always looking forward. So, when you come by the town offices and look at the corn growing, remember that David liked to grow things. Sit down on this stone bench. Think about ways of helping your neighbor. Or look at this new office building and this beautiful granite bench. And contemplate what we can do, like David, to get involved and make Royalton an even greater place to live. Thank you.
And our next speaker is Corey Chapman.
This is Lauren, son. Well, I was invited back to say something more about David, so my last public spectacle could have been all that bad. I'm honored to be able to speak again about my good friend David Ainsworth. This time I promise not to ramble on and on. The good news is it isn't 90 degrees like it was back in June. I was asked a few days ago to say something more about Dave. I felt like I'd already expressed how I felt about him and what he meant to me and my family. But one thing that keeps popping in my head over the last few weeks is the irony of a granite bench being dedicated to David Ainsworth. It's a lovely bench, don't get me wrong, and it's an honor for any man to have a bench placed in his name. It just makes me laugh because David never would have used a granite bench to sit on. He never stopped moving. Yeah, there were quite a few times that I caught him in his living room taking a cat nap or two. And you can usually catch a shot of him on the Channel 3 News with his eyes closed while up at the steakhouse. Those were his quiet times, rather rare. He was involved in everything, as if running a dairy farm needed anything else. I posted on Facebook a few weeks ago a funny little picture that I found, and it said 100 dairy farmers were asked in a poll what they like to do in their spare time. 95 farmers didn't understand the question, and 5 of them didn't know what day it was. David was no different. He didn't have any spare time. He filled any time away from the farm with more work. He was on a dozen different boards over the years. Often he could be seen marching down South Winter Street with his tuba or trombone, and at the Cumbers School as a member of the Reading Mentors program. David was a state representative and was a trustee over a half dozen other organizations. He did everything but deliver the mail, which I'm told his grandfather did. Always ready to help and assist us all to do better. He was a very busy man. One of the best things about being asked to speak a few months after his passing is that now I can talk about what my feelings have been since he left us back in May. I've never been very religious. What happens to us when we're gone is beyond me. I've always felt, though, like someone is watching over me. Over the years, odd things have happened to me on various anniversaries. You can get rather carried away daydreaming as a farmer. Long hours are spent alone. I have 2 fields that I hay now that I spend a little extra time on. One is my parents' field up on a spring road in Tunbridge. I go to great lengths to hay this as smooth as possible, often seeing how fast I can hook onto another wagon while chopping haylage, or pull off some cool move while round bailing. I do this not to impress my parents. I feel any disappointment they have in me they should have gotten over years ago. I do this because my grandpa Wally and Merle Howe are both buried in the cemetery next door. I feel like they're watching me while I'm doing what they wish they both still could do. The other field that I now feel extremely self-conscious haying is Larry Trottier's field. It is right next to the cemetery that Dave is now buried in. I always try to make my windrows as straight as possible. Never want to leave even a crumb behind. I hayed the first cut off at about 4 days after David's funeral. I dried it for square bales. I just turned it over for the last time and wanted to give it a few more minutes of sun before I started baling. I grabbed a handful of hay and walked down to the cemetery to see if I could find where Dave was buried, and I did. I left the hay with him so that he could give it a smell and walk back out in the field to start baling. Only about 30 bales into about 800, my baler came apart and I was done for the day. With rain coming in later that evening and chores to do in less than an hour, I needed to make a decision quick. I unhooked and hopped back onto my tractor and headed south on 14 like I'd done so many times before, heading for the comfort of my friend David's farm. He may be testing me, but I thought I was about to show him as I hooked onto his round baler and cleaned up my hay. When I picture these old men testing me, I have an image of that famous paintings of the dogs playing poker. Like I said, I have a lot of time to daydream. My grandpa Scrib would be sitting drinking a scotch. Earl would be drinking some of my Uncle Craig's hard cider, and Dave would be drinking a Diet Coke, sugar-free. They would laugh at the way they keep testing me. Cabs pulling backwards, thunder in the distance, a tractor that won't start, and I could literally go on forever. I felt though they would be impressed by my family's resilience. Hit after hit, we still sit on the porch every night and know that we were lucky to still have each other. I was a Marine. One of the first things they teach you at Paris Island is the Marine Corps history. They do this to keep you motivated through your time in the Marines. They don't want you to let any of the Marines that came before you down. This is how we run our farm. Constantly telling stories to our children about times gone by. Never wanting to let the old boys down. Doing our best every day, just like David taught me. In a month, Chris Donamaker and myself will be out here in this field to harvest David's corn. We're going to have breakdowns. We're going to get tired. And we're going to wish the day would just come to an end. But I know we're going to be okay, because I can look over here to this bench and know that all the poker dogs are going to be sitting here laughing, but still watching over us. So thank you to the Town of Royalton for placing this lovely granite bench. At first I thought it was ironic, but now they'll put it to good use, and so will I.
Corey Chapman is pretty darn hard to follow. I would say that his future is bright just because of his intelligence and his ability to communicate. But we're not talking about him, we're talking about David Ainsworth, who was more than a farmer. He was an agriculturalist. He constantly looked for new ways and improved ways to build his business. He was more than a politician. He was a total public servant, as moderator for the town and for innumerable years as our voice in the state legislature, where he served very faithfully and well. He was a father to two fine young people, Luther and Grady, who have grown up to develop their own lifestyles and interests. Of all the sensible things that he stood for, marrying Peggy was the most sensible that his life got. 100 years from now, when this bench will service the public, even though most will be a bit vague as to who they were sitting on, but David will be doing what he most liked doing, serving the people of Royalton. Thank you.
I think Peggy's going to have memories of both the funeral and this event, and maybe others, as baking in the sun. We need some sort of awning, maybe, in the future, like you. Well, not only is following David as state rep for Royalton and Tunbridge in Montpelier a hard act to follow. It's even a taller order to follow Charlie and Corey and Bushrod speaking to you here today about David. Part of that is that the three of you grew up with David and knew him your whole lives, whereas to me in Tunbridge, he was always a Santa Claus or moderator, or a moderator I never got to see, unfortunately, because town meeting falls on the same day as Tunbridge, and or even as the what supermodels are to the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, David was to Cabot Cheese. You'd see him go down the 18-wheeler trucks. He'd be like, "Hi, David." Unless you've been up in Montpelier, you might not realize how collegial the legislature is. That Republicans and Democrats actually, while they don't vote all the time together, they all talk together and are extremely friendly. And so I was not surprised, or I was pleasantly surprised actually to when I got up there that so many legislators who were still there asked how David was doing. So people like Jim Harrison or Harvey Smith, Bob LeClaire, all these reps would come up and ask me, "How's David doing?" And I said, "Well, I'll give him a call and I'll get back to you." Because I knew sometimes he was doing well and sometimes he wasn't doing so well. And I called David and left a message, and then a day later, he called, and this was typical David. I thought that he started to go through all the places in Montpelier I could stay if I didn't come home and do chores like he used to do. And then he sort of ranked them by how expensive they were too. Because if nothing else, he was both generous and incredibly frugal. So, and then he started to work on all the restaurants I could go to in Montpelier. Same thing, like this one has a really good deal on Wednesdays. Go to this one on Mondays. And I thought that was the sort of David, that he was reaching out to me, and as a mentor, as we've seen with people like Corey, he mentored a lot of people in these two towns. So this bench here, on the way down here, there's a bench in the town cemetery in Tunbridge that I want to see because it has something engraved on it. So we went up there in our car, bottomed the car out, and it says, "Sit down, friend, and rest a bit." And I thought, well, this bench serves that purpose. So, well, David had all these salutary qualities, which we've all heard about here today. The one I keep hearing about was that everybody says, everybody here, everybody I've talked to in Royalton and Tunbridge, it doesn't matter what political stripe you are, they all say David was a friend. So I think this bench, the bench in Tunbridge says, "Sit down, friend, and rest a bit." And I think this bench represents friendship. So on behalf of Royalton and Tunbridge, all us citizens, thank you, David.
Yes? Would you like to say something? I thought you were going to come and talk. You were a perfect intro to my next thing of saying if anybody else would like to say something. No? All right. So now we open it up to the audience. If there's anybody that wanted to say something, please, you can come forward. I know it's always hard, but if there's anything you want to say or want to just tell a little story that you might know about Dave, now's the opportunity to do that. Okay. Yes, Peggy, I would love you to. We weren't sure you were, but I'm glad you are.
I was just going to say thank you to everybody. Many of you stole my husband away on many evenings. But it's just thanks, it's overwhelming to think the number of people that he affected and just the amount of help that I've received since his passing. And I just can't say thank you
So, you got everybody? All right. So, to all of you and your family that are present, we dedicate this bench on August 18th, 2019, in honor of David Ainsworth, not only as a true Vermonter, as the bench says, but a tried and true prolific member of the Royalton community. Thank you. You all got their pictures? All right, so we're going to move over to the South Royalton Green for cake and ice cream. So we hope you'll come over there, and that's going to begin at 2 o'clock, okay?
Another one that has stuff on Facebook.